cellular level.
Okay.
And what we know is that as the disease, the actual profile of response will vary a little bit depending upon the mechanism, and that's largely because of the ancillary targets that are hit. So if you block IL-17 versus IL-23 or TNF, you will see that the various cytokine profiles will change differently from one another. But ultimately, when you have stable, controlled disease, the profiles are extremely similar. Actually, they're highly similar, and any differences are likely to just the residual differences that are there because of the particular mechanism, and maybe because you're now starting to get interference with drug. So if you're looking at, for example, IL-17 activity, and you're blocking IL-17A completely, you're not going to see the same signal that you would if you're blocking IL-23, because there are IL-23 independent sources of IL-17A, for example. And so you are going to get a different signature, but it's not meaningful. And early in the course of the response, until you actually abrogate whatever's driving psoriasis, you will see a difference in profile. But show me the results a year out. And don't show me just saying, oh, because we've achieved PASI 100. No, you have to show me when you have comparable levels of blockade. Not PASI. PASI does not tell us anything about blockade. So when someone, and I can tell you I had an argument with a person who actually worked in a laboratory for many years, who happens to be in Portland, Oregon, and is now trying to be a clinician, telling me that PASI 100 was telling us that the blockade was the same. Oh, my goodness, guy, you worked in a bloody lab. You know that's not the case. It's impossible. It doesn't tell you anything about the degree of blockade. So a lot of these experiments are not all I can say is I hope I'm the reviewer, because they're not scientifically sound at all. They don't have adequate controls. So they're marketing studies, but they're not scientifically sound.
Okay, makes sense. Because actually, so the Cosentyx study that I was talking about, it was deemed mechanistic studies looking at IL-17 versus IL-23 MOAs on ustekinumab inadequate responding psoriatic plaques. So they were looking at the clearance of all clear and most clear, and we still haven't seen the results of this study.
No. And the study is doomed to failure because resolution of these plaques is only part of the issue, and there is a sampling bias that occurs, and then you're also looking at what's the temporal profile. So there's no question that early in the course of therapy there will be mechanism-dependent alterations in signature. So if you're blocking TNF as your primary pathway, then of course you're going to see suppression of TNF, and everything else will follow later. If you're blocking IL-17, you're going to see IL-17 drops pretty quickly, and then you'll see everything else kind of follow suit. And likewise with IL-23, you don't see that instant reduction in IL-17. It's not as fast, either clinically or biologically, as fast as blocking 17, because 17A is the final, seems to be, or F, seems to be the final signaling cytokine, the activator of keratinocyte proliferation. Having that taken out by IL-17A, of course, is going to lead to a different signature than if you have it taken out with 23, where you're going to have a lag. You still have 17 production around. You still have 17 around. You're just turning it off. But it's taken a while. So none of these actually, from a scientific perspective, are that informative.
Okay.
And these other studies that are supposedly mechanistic, they're not, and they're not controlling for the things that need to be controlled in order to make any definitive statements about disease modification. I guarantee that's futile. And when it comes to mechanisms, there may be some differences, but these studies are not properly controlled to provide any meaningful results. Yep, they will see something. Yep, they may see correlations, but they're not going to be informative in any way.
And actually, the thing I understand, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that the mechanism in psoriasis really is the IL-17, not necessarily the IL-23.
Well, the final effector appears to be 17.
Right.
We know that the keratinocytes have receptors for 17A and F. They also produce 17A and F, but they're really more it's the potentiation for them to proliferate when there's a high signal. And there may be other potentiators, so you may get synergy if you have TNF. So it's not a one-stop shop, but very clearly, if you have no 17, you're not going to get psoriasis. If you have no TNF alpha, maybe you're
gonna, yeah. Okay, but it seems to be going, let's say, not against, but from what I've understood from the head-to-head trial comparing IL-23 and IL-17s, it seems like the IL-23 really are they were superior in many trials. If we look at the Eclipse study, the Emerge trial from AbbVie as well, and the Oasis 2.
Yeah. So I think one needs to be careful in saying that these are comparing mechanisms, because they're not. They're comparing drugs that have different mechanisms of action according to the labels.
Right.
So secukinumab, we know, is going to work fairly quickly, and then there will be a nutritional response that's entirely a pharmacological effect. Right. You're giving this loading dose for a month, and then you're letting them wean off. So you would expect to see that around month 5, month 6, that there will be a nutritional response. And that's exactly what we see. And you can't escape it. Certain authors said that, we have maintenance of response based upon the phase 3 data. And I have to say, even my name's appended to one of those publications. But it was, no, that's an artifact of the analysis. When you actually look at your data dispassionately, you see a nutritional response. Ixekizumab sees a nutritional response, but not till into the second year. And that, too, is simply a pharmacological effect. For 12 weeks, for 3 months, you're giving this whack and higher dose, double the dose, and then you're extending the dosing interval. So you would expect that after a year and a half or so, between a year and a half, you're going to see a nutritional response. That's exactly what you see. And it won't be in the PASI 75s, because you're already overdosing those guys. You're going to see it in the higher response levels. And if you compare Secu versus Ixi works better. It's a more potent drug. So you can't say because they compared the Secu that they're looking at mechanism of action. They're looking at a comparison to another drug that has a different mechanism of action.
Right.
They could do the same thing with Sun's drug, Tildra. Tildra is a weak cousin.
That's true. I don't think they have a head-to-head. Right?
Yeah, it works. It works the same as Usti, except its binding characteristics are such that it cannot do better than it does. There's no difference between a 300 milligram dose and a 600 milligram dose, or 150 and 300, or 200 and 400. They're all going to work comparably well, and it just peaks out because it has its binding characteristics